Well, they may have insurance to cover at least some of it. They likely will. The issue with one of Harry's previous cases against the Murdoch Empire was that he'd been offered a settlement, and once you're offered a settlement, your insurance company will tell you to take it, and if you refuse, then they won't insure you anymore. But the Mail never offered to settle this case, so insurance should cover at the very least a substantial amount of this money, and then the other costs will be spread over multiple shoulders, but also particularly, I think part of the basis for launching this lawsuit in the first place was there was some money left over from Max Mosley when he passed away. And so that will cover some of the costs. So I'm not 100% convinced that Harry's going to necessarily have to shell out that much himself in the end.
So Prince Harry's visit to the UK is ongoing. He'll be going to a children's hospital in Birmingham, and he's there to mark the one-year countdown to his Invictus Games, which will take place in the city next year. But the trip has obviously been overshadowed by his heavy defeat in the High Court for his privacy case against the Daily Mail newspaper group, Associated Newspapers. And he's currently on his own. His wife, Meghan Markle, and their two children stayed at home in the US amid continuing rows with the palace over protection, over accommodation, over seemingly very petty bureaucratic things that they can't seem to get on the same page on. So to discuss this, Jack Royston is going to join us, who is Chief Royal Correspondent for Newsweek. Good afternoon, Jack.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming back. We had you on earlier in the week as well. It's very nice to see you again. Look, it's been a challenging trip. It was, I am assured, a coincidence that Harry was here for the Invictus stuff at the same time as this Associated Newspapers decision came out. But what does it do for brand Harry, and Meghan? You know, this is a campaign he's been waging for well over a decade, really. He obviously, his whole life in some ways has been affected and shaped by interactions with the media. But it is a pretty searing defeat that he's received. Absolutely. At the Mail. He's described it as a complete whitewash, which, you know, some have interpreted as an attack on the judiciary. I saw the Shadow Attorney General criticising him for that. I mean, where do you think all this leaves Harry?
I think this has been a fairly unmitigated catastrophe, to be honest. You know, Harry didn't need to file this case. He chose to, and it has brought a lot of reputational destruction on him, basically. And one particular aspect of it that's come out today, because obviously the judgment was Tuesday, but we've just had a major article written by one of the journalists who he sued, a woman called Charlotte Griffiths. She's the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, and she has basically put a whole load more into the public domain, kind of to further challenge Harry's lawsuit. She was accused of phone hacking. The judge sided with her and said she was honest in her evidence, but she's now put several very damaging extra additional details in the public domain. One of which she said she went to a shooting weekend party with Harry in 2011, and he took a small white pill out and put it in her mouth. And, you know, she said she thinks it was probably a prank and it wasn't drugs, but she was concerned. And then the other thing is she said that Harry's camp were the ones who leaked details of a meeting last summer between Harry's spokespeople and the King's spokespeople. So two fairly big kind of bombshells.
Yeah, because
for Harry.
Those leaks led to a picture that was taken of this meeting taking place in Mayfair, somewhere St James's, and that was flagged by Harry's camp as another betrayal, but actually it came from inside the camp. So it is quite revealing.
Exactly. So she wrote that story. So her account is, they told this to me. Not just they were the ones who leaked it, but they leaked it to me. And there were, you know, the Telegraph was told at the time that, you know, it hadn't come from Sussex. I'm fairly sure I was told that at the time too. So basically, Harry, this whole visit has been overshadowed by a number of things that were completely within Harry's control. You know, he didn't need to file the lawsuit. If he was going to file it, he didn't need to accuse Charlotte Griffiths when he had parties with her when he was young, in his younger years. He could have simply, accepted Buckingham Palace offer of accommodation when it was first made, because that was another point of conflict that has overshadowed visit. He could, he was blown to pieces by the fact that the Home Office denied him police protection, but they have always kind of had that position, so he could have just accepted that from the word go. And now this visit that was supposed to be about reconciliation,
Many mistakes. Susan Edwards, a listener, writes in to point out that it's not just Harry who lost this case. Many other important people involved, including Elton John, Liz Hurley. There is reportedly a £50 million bill for this in cost. There's going to be a cost hearing coming up, I believe, but that is an enormous amount of money. Who's footing that?
Well, they may have insurance to cover at least some of it. They likely will. The issue with one of Harry's previous cases against the Murdoch Empire was that he'd been offered a settlement, and once you're offered a settlement, your insurance company will tell you to take it, and if you refuse, then they won't insure you anymore. But the Mail never offered to settle this case, so insurance should cover at the very least a substantial amount of this money, and then the other costs will be spread over multiple shoulders, but also particularly, I think, part of the basis for launching this lawsuit in the first place was there was some money left over from Max Mosley when he passed away. And so that will cover some of the costs. So I'm not 100% convinced that Harry's going to necessarily have to shell out that much himself in the end.
And I guess my last thought for you, Jack, is that under the context for all this is a very difficult relationship that Harry has with his family, with his brother, with his father. His kids still haven't met their grandfather. Just on a personal, emotional level, that must be very difficult for him. Are we getting any closer to that, or actually it just seems like the Sussex circus continually gets in the way of a reconciliation?
Well, this is the tragedy of this visit. Yeah, so they have technically met the king, but Lily was 1 at the time, so she won't remember. Archie was 3. He probably won't remember.
We won't remember it, no.
If they're going to have an actual memory of their grandfather and feel an emotional connection towards him, then they're going to have to see him, now in the years to come when they're older. And that really did seem like it was on the cards, but then obviously this toxic cloud gathered over everything,
as it so often does. Well, look, brilliant. Thank you for joining us. That was Jack Royston, Chief Royal Correspondent for Newsweek.